Bill O'Reilly created quite a stir last night with the controversial talking points. Bill challenged the president and civil rights leaders to address what he called the real race problems in America. We want to play this segment for you now in its entirety, and then we'll get immediate reaction right after. Listen.
President Obama and the race problem. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. On Friday, the president delivered surprise remarks to the press about the Trayvon Martin case and race in general. His main point, a plea for understanding.
There are very few African-American men in this country who haven't had the experience of being followed when they were shopping in a department store. That includes me. I don't want to exaggerate this, but those sets of experiences inform how the African-American community interprets what happened one night in Florida.
And that's true. Many black Americans harbor at least some resentment for past injury. But what President Obama surely knows is that you cannot reach a fair criminal verdict or design effective public policy that solves present problems by dwelling on the sins of the past. Talking Points believes the president was correct in addressing the race issue and framing it with the Martin case. He's the leader of America, and the country's talking about this. By the way, when you hear a pundit or politician saying we should have a, quote, conversation about race, that means you're in for a sea of bloviating, which will likely lead nowhere. The sad truth is that from the president on down, our leadership has no clue at all, about how to solve problems within the black community, and many are frightened to even broach the issue. That's because race hustlers and the grievance industry have intimidated the so-called conversation, turning any valid criticism of African-American culture into charges of racial bias. So many in power simply walk away, leaving millions of law-abiding African-Americans to pretty much fend for themselves in violent neighborhoods. You want racism? That's racism. Thus, it is time for some straight talk. And I hope the president is listening tonight, because we need him to lead on this issue. Trayvon Martin was killed because circumstances got out of control. He was scrutinized by neighborhood watchman George Zimmerman because of the way he looked. Not necessarily his skin color, there's no evidence of that, but because he was a stranger to Zimmerman and was dressed in clothing sometimes used by street criminals. It was wrong for Zimmerman to confront Martin based on his appearance. But the culture that we have in this country does lead to criminal profiling because young black American men are so often involved in crime. The statistics, overwhelming. But here's the headline. Young black men commit homicides at a rate 10 times greater than whites and Hispanics combined. When presented with damning evidence like that, and like the mini Holocaust in Chicago, where hundreds of African Americans are murdered each year, the civil rights industry looks the other way or makes excuses. They blame guns, poor education, lack of jobs. Rarely do they define the problem accurately. So here it is. The reason there is so much violence and chaos in the black precincts is the disintegration of the African American family. Right now, about 73% of all black babies are born out of wedlock. That drives poverty. And the lack of involved fathers leads to young boys growing up resentful and unsupervised. When was the last time you saw a public service ad telling young black girls to avoid becoming pregnant? Has President Obama done such an ad? How about Jackson or Sharpton? Has the Congressional Black Caucus demanded an ad like that? How about the PC pundits who work for NBC News? White people don't force black people to have babies out of wedlock. That's a personal decision, a decision that has devastated millions of children and led to disaster both socially and economically. So, raised without much structure, young black men often reject education and gravitate towards the street culture, drugs, hustling, gangs. Nobody forces them to do that. Again, it is a personal decision. But the entertainment industry encourages the irresponsibility by marketing a gangsta culture, hip-hop, movies, trashy TV shows to impressionable children. In fact, President Obama has welcomed some of the worst offenders in that cesspool to the White House, when he should be condemning what these weasels are doing. These so-called entertainers get rich, while the kids who emulate their lyrics and attitude destroy themselves. And then there's the drug situation. Go to Detroit and ask anyone living on the south side of the 8 Mile Road what destroyed their city. They will tell you narcotics. They know addiction leads to crime and debasement. But what do the race hustlers and limousine liberals yell about? The number of black men in prison for selling drugs. Oh, it's so unfair. It's a nonviolent crime, and blacks are targeted. That is one of the biggest lies in the history of this country. The thugs who sell hard drugs, no matter what color they are, deserve to be put away for long periods of time. They sell poison. They sell a product that enslaves and kills. They are scum. When was the last time you heard the Congressional Black Caucus say that? How about Jackson and Sharpton? How about President Obama? The solution to the epidemic of violent crime in poor black neighborhoods is to actively discourage pregnancies out of marriage, to impose strict discipline in the public schools, including mandatory student uniforms, and to create a zero-tolerance policy for gun and drug crimes, imposing harsh mandatory prison time on the offenders. And finally, challenging the entertainment industry to stop peddling garbage. Hey, listen up, you greed heads. If a kid can't speak proper English, uses the F word in every sentence, is disrespectful in his or her manner, that child will never be able to compete in the marketplace of America. Never. And it has nothing to do with slavery. It has everything to do with you Hollywood people and you derelict parents. You're the ones hurting these vulnerable children. You want a conversation? You got it. You want a better situation for blacks? Give them a chance to revive their neighborhoods and culture. Work with the good people to stop the bad people. Pumping money into the chaos does little. You can't legislate good parenting or responsible entertainment, but you can fight against the madness with discipline, a firm message, and little tolerance for excuse making. It is now time for the African-American leadership, including President Obama, to stop the nonsense, walk away from the world of victimization and grievance, and lead the way out of this mess. And that's a memo.
For more on this, let's bring in David Webb, host of The David Webb Show on SiriusXM Patriot, and civil rights activist Dr. Alveda King, the director of the African American Outreach for Priests for Life and the niece of Martin Luther King Jr. Welcome to you both. Dr. King, I'll start with you. There's a lot there. Your initial reaction?
My initial reactions, I'm glad that Bill does recognize that it is the president's job and responsibility to advance this conversation about race. I do want to remind the president that my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., said that we must learn to live together as brothers, and I added sisters, or perish as fools. And in order to be brothers, we must admit that we are one human race, Acts 17:26, one blood. As to Bill's comments about the African-American family, I agree. And I do agree that we must strengthen our fathers and giving them equal opportunity in the marketplace to be able to advance and to help their families. I do not agree, though, with Bill that it is a choice that our African-American families have fallen apart. We need much more support. And finally, I believe that instead of berating our children and talking about how bad they are, we love all of our children and we love our families. I believe that rather than sending our children to their graves, we should be taking them to church and to Jesus Christ. And I think we can help our families, but it should not be the Christian church only divided into separate categories like the black church, the white church, Hispanic church, Latino church, all of that. But it should be the Christian church, period. And so as Christians, we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or indeed we will continue to perish as fools.
And David, a lot of conversation there about fathers, about the family core in the African American community. Bill cited a number. He said 73% of children now in the African American community are born to unwed parents, and he expressed great concern about fathers' involvement here. How do you begin to have those conversations within the community, David?
Well, first, maybe we should make Bill O'Reilly the president of the NAACP, and that would be a starting point. And it's not equipped to be taken lightly, because the leadership is what I'm talking about. There are some things I absolutely agree with because it comes to accountability, responsibility, the culture, and the reality that we deal with in this country, in all communities, but in the black community. We can separate, and I don't want to get into the statistics and the data. He uses very top line, the 30,000-foot view of some of these numbers. The out-of-wedlock birth rate is actually about 50% with blended families, et cetera, for the black community. But that also reflects a split between the urban environment and the suburban environment, which began when more college graduates came out of the 80s. Overall, we have lost our way when it comes to the family structure, and the family structure that then is followed by the educational structure. We have a generation of parents, biologically, they may be parents, but educationally, they weren't always the best qualified parent. And we see that playing out in the younger people when we talk about the influence of Hollywood, their idolization of basketball players, rappers, football players, when in fact there's much broader in this American mosaic, a variety of people to choose from. So, and by the way, to go to Dr. King's message about church, yes, the family culture is important. Yes, the church structure is important. But here's the reality. If church was the only solution, and I don't think she proposes that, it's one of the facets of this, then we should have a new busing program to bus them all to church. What we need to do is get the black community to buy back into the value proposition that is America, that is our success, that is made others, regardless of ethnicity, a successful part of this country. And we've lost that, and the leadership has failed. The president may be able to open the door with a microphone, but it really has to be held at the community level. We have to put aside the leaders and those that claim to be leaders and sit down as families and as people and begin to have honest, real, and open conversations.
And I want to bring Dr. King back in. Please go ahead, and then I've got a quick question for you.
I'd like to add quickly, there's one of the young ladies, the twin girls on Sister Sister, and one is married to a Fox News commentator as well, but she said that she waited until she was 29 years old to have sex. She had sex one time, and then she said, this is not what I want to do. I want to be married when I have sex. And then they got married. She's only had sex with one person, and now they have a child. So that model is, we know that model works, and I think we just need to encourage our young people to re-examine human sexuality, the purpose, what they want to do with their lives. And so I did not mean to just say church had the only example. There's a way to strengthen our community and the world community, the global community, with these types of examples in media. She is a TV star. And so we do have to have better music, better examples in our film and all of that. I agree with that as well.
I want to get to something and give you both a chance to respond to this as well. We know that Bill Cosby has often launched these conversations. He's spoken many times about his criticism of parents that he felt like weren't involved enough in lives with African American children. He's taken a lot of heat when he's spoken out many times, which he has the right to do. Do either of you worry about concerns that if you try to raise these issues and have these conversations, there is going to be backlash? And Dr. King, I'll start with you.
We must have these conversations and raise these issues. We get a backlash sometimes, but life is very important. The family is very important. The natural family, from conception until natural death. Learning to care about the babies in the womb, the children once they're born, the adults, the elderly, the grandparents, and the grandparents can teach the young children a lot as well. So we don't need to discredit or to push aside any part of our community, but to bring all of that together. And I think that along with the conversation about race, we must continue the conversation about family.
And David, not a lot of time left, but I want to give you a chance to weigh in as well.
We do need to focus on the family and the communal level. But we also can't ignore the reality. The reality is that in the community, you have got to get into the streets, as it were, and talk to all levels of people. We also have to face, and you talk about backlash. Look, I get backlash on a daily basis. I don't worry about it. But we have to, and I'll get backlash for this, because we have to realize that we will be able to save, help, and advance some, and there will be some that will not get the message, go along, or advance themselves. And if we don't face that reality and help as many as we can, and that helps the next generation, that is an unselfish way to take a look at the future. Help everyone we can, enable them to help others, and not just deal in the, I guess, the ether on this issue.
I hate to leave it there, but we got to wrap you up. David Webb, Dr. Alveda King, thank you both. More news